Hi, everybody. This is Oji and Ted at Product Mind. Today, we have a special session. So, if you've been following us, we've come from a very productive, like 2, 3 weeks. The Lenny podcast dropped, and which thank you so much for everyone who followed us, who jumped in, who bought the book. We're just so grateful for that. And then, three of us, Ted, Aizen, and I, went to industry in Cleveland and we delivered a power packed workshop on AI and the core, basically how to build your own AI strategy, actually because of all the pressure from boards and CEOs. And I delivered a keynote and we did a book signing at industry. So it's been mad cat time for us, but we're back and we want to talk a little bit about some of the headlines or maybe some of the things that are not so headlines that we think should be uh, related to artificial intelligence and how it's affecting founders and builders. All right. So teeing us up first is what the teenagers call AI slop. So Ted is interested in this. The MIT guy is always interested in all the hard research. So here he goes. Go.
Yeah, there you go. So interestingly enough, the kids and the people at the Harvard Business Review agree on the term AI slop. So if you're wondering what AI slop is and you can't figure it out for yourself, they basically define it as people who use AI tools, generative AI tools, to create stuff that looks like productive work, but actually is not productive work, i.e., slop. And for example, hey, firing off an email, right? And saying, hey, okay, well, I just had my AI write that email, and 4 or 5 paragraphs of it actually have very little content, but you need to put something big out for your team or for your boss. So this is on the heels of the MIT survey, which we've referred to in the past, saying that 95% of investments aren't productive, and it's trying to explain why. So the folks at the Harvard Business Review did a survey of 1,000 or so people in the workplace. Now, this is self-reported, so keep that in mind. And they asked them to say, hey, what exactly are you using this AI stuff for? Are you using it for some of these other use cases? And then their score that they came up with was 41% of people have used generative AI and created AI slop. And then they go on to calculate, oh, okay, that's resulting in hundreds of hours of lost productivity, blah, 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 per workplace, and then scaling, whatever ridiculous amount of money in the economy lost because people are using these Gen AI tools essentially to pretend like they're working and pretend like they know stuff as opposed to actually working or actually knowing stuff. Now, the 41% actually is about people who have used it with their coworkers. Interesting enough, it says 18% have used it, or I should say, dared to use it with their bosses. Okay, so again, it's self-reported. It's self-reported, right?
I
So
mean, look. My boss is telling me to use AI, so why wouldn't he use it? Why wouldn't I use it on him? So that's what I'm saying.
I know, exactly. It seems like an opening, right? And be like, listen, boss, I did exactly what you said. You wanted an email in 30 seconds. Here it is, right?
Yeah.
The interesting part of this is, again, stuff that we have said plenty of times. We said it in our workshop. We've said it here, which is that generative AI is a tool. It is not magic. It does not think, right? It's built and trained on the internet with all of its flaws. It is inherently a probabilistic model, right? And that's such hallucinations, these kinds of things are inherent in what it does, right? It is not something that is designed that way. And therefore, if you go and use it and use it in naive fashions, you're going to get the kind of results that you deserve, right? And this AI slop is really just saying, hey, surprise, surprise, if the CEO told his board and told Wall Street, we're putting AI everywhere, and then issues the mandate, thou shalt use AI in everything that we do in this place. Yeah, surprise, surprise. A lot of people just, did it the quick, most expedited way possible, and just to fulfill that mandate and actually get the lift that they were looking for, right? So that doesn't surprise me at all. I don't know about you, man.
So Ted, the thing that I think about this is like let's unpack AI slop a bit. I had this moment with my son where we're talking about these words that are pop culture words, and everyone approaches it differently because it's not a word that used to describe anything; it's a word we receive from the culture. And so, if I use AI to write a thing, why is it AI slop? Like, just break it down. Which part is slop? Why is it slop? Because I think we want to be precise
Yep.
for people.
Right, right. Okay. So the article refers to it, and I think this is a somewhat commonsensical definition, is that there is a ability for AI to essentially elongate and add a bunch of crap, right? To hit goals of, hey, I need 3 paragraphs, or hey, I need 300 words, or whatever. So interesting here is that, so I have a company that Daily Voice, which is a news outlet, right? And we have a target length for the stories that we use, and we do use AI throughout our entire process. We did, the AI at the core of transformation, as it were. We started that process 2 years ago, more. Anyway, we went deliberately to not say use AI to achieve a particular length in a story, because what it does is it will get there in a
Mm,
way that is not the way humans think about it. And so readers, when they read it, can go,
interesting.
oh, this is not, I'm not sure why, but this article is just not capturing my attention. It's not because it's a bad writer, it's a good writer, but it doesn't do it in a way that a human would then say, you know what, it keeps my attention going. No different than on a viral video or anything like that. If there are tips and tricks that can go only so far. So this is the point of AI slop, or I think one of the definitions of AI slop, which I buy
So,
into,
so
which is
hold
the
on a second. Hold on a
elongate.
second. So how do you do it? Do you tell it to write short, and then you force the humans to review and get to the target length, or what are you doing?
No, we actually don't do that at all. So we don't do any particular targeting of length per se, right? So this is like in how you use Gen AI and some of the stuff that we talk about in our workshops, right? Is if you ask it for the final product a certain way, you're not going to be satisfied. So you break it down into the different pieces. So actually, this is a pretty long and complicated conversation. But
Okay. Okay.
the writing part is just the very part at the end after that what it is. There's also an editing kind of refinement that is also using AI tools. But the point here is in the kind of raw writing, okay, and again, can be done many different ways, or through system prompts, or through prompt engineering, or whatever. Don't specify write 200 words, 500 words, whatever, right? We leave that out and then edit it later.
So it's really about AI essentially putting in basically useless filler. So like create a PRD, create anything, and it sort of, and we see this all the time, and people maybe don't notice it, but like if you ask AI to write for you, especially if you didn't give it the first substrate, the core idea, it can just be, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, what is the contrast? What is the, I guess, a contrast? Like sometimes you tell people to think about something and they come up with nothing, right? They write a couple of words, whatever, right? Basically, there's also human slop. So, like, how should we
Yeah.
think about those two things? Yeah. You think?
Well, yeah, it's interesting because to me, there is definitely human slop, and this means that the generative AI is taking on very human characteristics, which again makes sense because it's trained on, or at least originally, before we have the iterative problem, it was trained on content created by humans by definition, right? So, but yet, even if there are humans creating content, there's still very slop-like ways to do that, like such as cutting and pasting, right? So, cut and paste from a previous email into a new email, then change it up. But then you didn't change it up quite right, and some of it's not. You didn't put the attention you need into it, and then that can be slop. Or hey, cut and paste in, and this has happened before, right? Like this is like the story, not to me, I guess, but like to other people, right? Oh well, if the teacher isn't reading the middle part of your paper, well, just cut and paste a bunch of crap in there, right? So I'm just gonna literally cut and paste.
Oh my God. I just had a flashback. I had a flashback. When I was in high school, if you misbehaved, this was King's College, Nigeria, very British tradition. If you misbehaved, one of the standard punishments was to write an essay, right? And you could write a 4-page essay or an 8-page essay, depending on, if you did very bad things, you write a 16-page essay, which is horrible because that shoots all your homework time for the day, right? And no one gives a crap because you're in boarding school. And you know what we would do? We would write the first page, write the first paragraph, and then copy a textbook through the other pages. And then at the back, write something reasonable. So we were proper slop producers, right? Because no one had the time to
Yeah.
read it all, right?
That's it.
Sorry,
And that's
that
it,
just
right?
unlocked like a memory.
So right, and so
Okay.
I think the point of this is a lot about I think understanding the limitations of how Gen AI work and prompting, right? And so there's a lot of this, and this actually brings up an interesting point, which is related. And although this wasn't on our original list, Audrey, but I'm going to bring it up, which is there's been some stuff about using Bayesian techniques, okay, in order to get better results, reduce hallucinations, and these kinds of things. And this kind of makes sense, right? Given that LLMs are probabilistic in the first place, right? And so one of these, some of these more obvious techniques, and then libraries have been written about this. You can get yourself an open source library. Somebody's already written this. It just reruns your prompt a bunch of different times, right? And then you can average the results basically, right? Or you can look at the
Mhm.
results and see what the clustering is or what have you, right? And that approach makes a lot of sense if you are not going to go the other way and essentially scaffold or provide a seed for it to build around, right? If you give it
Mhm.
free reign, it's going to spit out a bunch of stuff, a lot of it which is may not be what you use. And so in order to make a prompt into something that's actually repeatable and useful, you have to wrap it around a system, right? And again, this
The
sounds
core
good.
of an idea, the core of your own intellection, it can proceed from that. But if you don't
Yeah.
do that, you're gonna get slop. I think that's what I want people to really understand. That the way to use AI is to give it a kernel of your original thinking. Otherwise, it's going to come up with an average or below average response to you. Whether it's vibe coding, you can't say, "Oh, design this app for me." No, you say this module of the app does this module of the app does this, critique it, make it better, but this is what the design is, and then it can make something for you. And look,
Yeah.
and this, I think you're absolutely right, but I want to talk about maybe something more fundamental, because one of the things we try to do at Product Mind is to combine product building with the philosophical or the secrets of the universe, whatever you want to call it. This stuff is going to run smack into two things. One, it's going to run smack into subpar content it's trained on that we've made, because we're not all geniuses. So that's number one. But number two is going to run smack into our desire to reduce the number of calories we spend thinking or talking. Like, people will take the path of least resistance at work. So
Yes.
AI will make us, like, if we're not careful, if we don't conceive of this correctly in the way we've talked about, we will make a lot of AI slop by definition. No one will ever stop it because we are lazy, right? We want to
Yes.
do the least amount of work to pay the most amount so that we can get back to watching the Raiders or something, right? This is so
Yes.
important. The intersection of AI and human psychology is something that we should spend a lot of time thinking about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But today's about quick hits. So let's get to the next one.
But how about the fact that AI adoption in lower income markets is sort of surprising? You want to tee up that one too?
Sure. So ChatGPT released a big study. A lot of people have taken a look at that study as to how ChatGPT is being used. There's a lot of interesting facts in there about people using it to create stuff but also to ask you questions and things like this. Okay. But buried in there is something that I noticed with regards of adoption between low and middle income and high income countries. And there's a couple of charts in there, and they basically just break it apart by income. And that what it's showing is a curve, okay, obviously, where it shows higher adoption for the higher income countries, but it's not the incredibly sharp or sharp exponential curve that you see for a lot of implementations of new technologies. In fact, it looks more like that, right? And so therefore, your middle income, it's not quite there, but it's getting quite, getting closer to what a high income, and your low income definitely still also shows a light, but it's there. The point being, at this early stage of generative AI technology, specifically ChatGPT, you are seeing a lot of adoption, more adoption than you normally see from low and middle income countries.
Well, let's talk about it a little differently. So, first of all, how is that different from, say, the mobile revolution, the cloud revolution? And also, should we tease that apart, predictively? Like, there's one thing to use ChatGPT, right? But obviously, these models and the research are not happening in those low-income countries. Like, how does that play? Like, if you don't make the models, you are certainly at a disadvantage. right? The US
Yeah.
is building Stargate or whatever it is. China is investing heavily on this thing. So yeah, someone in Vietnam is using this stuff. Does it make a difference that they're adopting it quickly? And how? Yeah, just how do we think around that?
Okay, so certainly compared to any hardware-based infrastructure event, those require infrastructure changes, and those are slower, right? Like often you see, and this is just obvious, that the winnings accrue to the winners, right? So, and what high-income countries want to develop the high-income markets their own, and so they invest in them more, and then it creates a flywheel effect where that keeps happening, right? The mobile revolution actually perhaps is interesting and perhaps will give you some warning that this might be different because it allowed generational skips to happen, right? So you talk about Africa, you talk about regions of Europe or Asia that were not able to be wired to the degree that Western Europe or the United States and other very first world countries, super developed countries were able to be.
There were
Mobile.
breaks because of infrastructure. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, and that's why you see things like M-Pesa and other digital payments. They actually came first to the markets that were in lower income, right? Because they had the need. First world has secure banking and ATMs and credit cards and all this good stuff, and those cash-driven places that all had mobile but didn't have any other infrastructure, right? Literally didn't have banks and ATMs. Well, they have this computer in their hands. So that actually was able to be there. So back to your question, because if Vietnam is not creating, the models, are they getting the winnings? And I think the answer is yes, because okay, as long as they're not generating AI slop, if they're using these AI tools to transform themselves, okay, give themselves superhuman powers, overcome the fact that they don't have the educational resources of the first world, overcome the fact they don't have the capital of the first world, using Gen AI tools, then that's huge, right? That allows bootstrapping and this ability to really catch up through these tools.
Interesting. So they get the productivity gains. They sort of boost up. But maybe their countries, their nations, the powerful people, their nations don't have the same benefit because they don't have the resources, right, to build
Right.
these new models and so on and so forth. Interesting. So there's going to be a bifurcation of commoners and nation states related to AI, right? Commoners will get the
Yeah.
benefit better as long as they can afford $20 a month or use like open source LLMs. I think this is very important because people are trying to predict how this plays out, whether this will create losers and winners and who will be the losers and winners. So I think this is very important. Anyway, shout outs to developing countries and people adopting this stuff to level up all the time. Okay. And then the other thing that I wanted to add to that is that very interesting. Everyone knows Lovable, vibe coding, sweetheart company. Our good friend Alina, who runs marketing there, seems to be influencing them because they are running hackathons, gender-based hackathons. Famously, STEM engineering has been very male focused, and the reason is a pipeline problem. From the time that young girls are in middle school up on the time they apply to the SAT and try to go to engineering school, there's just a lot of weeding out of women's interest in STEM, and maybe there's some natural thing that they've been socialized to as well. But they're running these hackathons because they believe, and I completely believe, since women are about 50% of the population, that if we can encourage women to get used to these tools and creating at the same level as men, because it's not math encumbered or all these things that they say women can't do, that would be great. For one, I'm a big, big fan. Like, I want to see more women-based hackathons. Men should hack all they want as well, and obviously, most of the hackathons we've ever been to is full of men. So I'm very excited about this. What's your take on that?
I agree. I think it's great to see that people are anticipating the problems of previous generations and previous rollouts of technology and say, you know what, like that's not going to happen again.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that the majority in the United States of the gender in the school is female, right? There are more women, there are more females, more women students than male students in schools right now.
In
So the
university,
fact that
specifically.
in university, yes,
Yeah.
yes, sorry, I meant tertiary, yeah, universities. and colleges. The fact that in the past that was different, right? The fact is that was different in the past. So now, if you don't see women in these fields, it's because of bad reasons, right? So previously, if you had underrepresentation, that kind of makes some sense, and now you had to fix it, earlier on upstream. Now it's saying, look, you know what? Like, just skip a step here, folks, and let's just get to the end. Give these tools to the people, who
Avoid the
need
pipeline
uplift.
problems. Yes. Hmm.
Boom,
Completely.
right?
No, I'm a big fan.
Boom.
I'm a big. This is genius. I mean, I don't know. People understand how much hiring managers and people who've been working in tech industry have. We've spent like millions, right, on
Oh yeah.
undoing the pipeline problems, hiring brilliant women, and so on and so forth. And this feels like it will. I mean, like Izina is like vibe coding stuff, right? And she hasn't really talked about that in the all the years we've been married. So I'm very very excited about this. I like what we've talked about gives me hope because I think that I come from a place where I thought this technology would make the world less equitable, but I think that there's still a chance that happens just because of data. So like data is mostly OECD data on the internet. But I think there are ways where this sort of pulls people to more equal place. Adoption in the global south, women getting their leg up and not being told that they can't code because vibe coding is whatever. So I'm very big on that. I think all good stuff, all things that make us hopeful, amongst all the doom and gloom. Okay, let's switch gears. So lots of advances on who's the richest person in the world. All of a sudden, Larry Ellison, who's been sort of dormant for like 10 years, the guy who owns like almost
Apparently, I
one
mean,
of the
he's happy
islands in
owning his
Hawaii.
Hawaiian island, and yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, island.
he's now the richest man in the world because AI, right? He made an investment and he's involved in Stargate, whatever. He's the stock, this is his wealth, got bid up. And then we
Yeah,
turn around and hear
yeah,
that Nvidia is putting $100 billion into OpenAI, and there's some like tax shenanigans in there. Before I say
yeah.
anything, I just like all this is astounding to me. Like, do you have like a point of view? I know you're gonna have a curmudgeonly take on this.
Oh, I don't know about curmudgeonly take on this. You know, it, listen, it's not that the Musks of the world that lost much money because Ellison gave money, right? So just so we're clear, like it's kind of like we're creating more billionaires and we're almost there at trillionaires, right? Um, the a
Yeah,
couple of
I say
things,
that. I
right?
think that Sam Altman. I think Sam Altman. Sorry, I think Sam Altman will be the first trillionaire, and I also think
Oh,
that
you heard it
Musk.
here. You heard it here.
I think that
Hey,
Musk will also he knows what he's doing with Grok and that Optimus thing. It'll be a pump and dump, but he might get there too. Anyway, keep going.
well, okay. So you just said what I was about to say, which is that pump and dump is alive and well. All right, not just for meme coins. Okay, it is certainly available for even sent to billionaires apparently. Look, I am actually quite surprised. I mean, trying to dig into more of what Oracle does. I mean, listen, Oracle is a beast. This isn't the Oracle that you and I grew up with, which was a database, right? Like they've bought so many different businesses, and I'm not even talking about the fact that that's a media empire also. So let's pull that off for a second. I mean, the technology side of the house literally does, they own so much now and they do so many different things. So they may have been a little bit quiet, but certainly they've been there doing a lot of stuff. And then boom, here comes the AI rocket fuel. And then boom, I think the stock went up 30 some percent, which is absurd given how well capitalized this is, right? Like
And
that,
for a big company
this
like
is
that,
not
that
some meme
is
stock.
incredible. Yeah.
Outrageous, right? But the point was, it was investors, and again, hype is here, right? People saying, wait a minute, I'm completely thought about this company wrong, baby, and I can't be wrong. Therefore, like, let's go get some. And then, anyway. So
Well, it's even
I for one am
it's
not a big believer, right, in the power of Oracle itself, but as a financial institution, it is incredibly powerful. Meaning, I think I don't. Again, like go ahead. Maybe you disagree, but The best and brightest don't work there anymore.
No,
They
no,
don't
no,
work
no, no.
at Oracle. They don't work at people.
I have one friend who works at Oracle, and it's a no op. It's a company I would never have worked for. I had no interest in relational databases early in my career. In fact, in grad school, this is how old Oracle is, because Oracle came up at the same time as Bill Gates. They had all these like competitors. I remember in grad school picking the non-Oracle thing to do my research in. But I think the way that this is happening is actually like peak bubble, right? So Oracle says, I'm going to invest in OpenAI. Okay. The AI hype kicks in. They go up 35%. Larry Ellison is worth $100 more billion. And so basically, they don't actually have to write a check anymore, right? They essentially, by announcing their investment, they created the money to make the investment. This is what is
Yes.
astounding about this, right? If you, NVIDIA says, I'm going to invest money in OpenAI, NVIDIA's stock goes up and they make the money that they will invest in OpenAI. And OpenAI, I heard, can use this money and defer their taxes for the next 10 years. They won't have to, even when they become profitable, they won't have to pay taxes forever, just like um, our president has structured his finances, right? And so I think this is the part
Hey.
where people should be worried, right? About the AI hype. Sometimes we think the AI hype is about, oh, there is no AGI. I don't think that's it. I think that when people use these things to make these financial, vapid wealth creation out of thin air, that's when we should all be really concerned.
Sure. I mean, this is the classic definition of a financial bubble, right? So if we
Yeah.
just change the words and we talk about real estate, okay, and it's like, hey, man, I've got an idea for you, Audrey. I'm going to give you the right to buy into these condos that have not actually been created yet. And then you're going to turn around and flip those condos, okay, later on, but still before they're actually up for sale. Okay, so you're basically flipping the rights to condos. And the reason you can do that is because I artificially control the supply and there's this hot condo that everyone wants, right? That is amazing and works great and makes you seem like a genius, makes me seem like a genius while the market is going up. When the market is going down, these things deflate, like pop, right? And then it's rocket fuel down as well, right? So the slide right, right off the cliff, it's just as fast as the rocket on the way up. So the having this kind of pressure makes it even worse. By the way, one other one that's out there, which to me was even more interesting. Well, first of all, OpenAI, the NVIDIA also benefits because OpenAI uses that money to buy their own crap. Okay, so like this is like amazing. Okay, like Microsoft did the same thing. Okay, I'm going to invest in OpenAI, and you're going to give it back to me in terms of Azure. I mean, this is nuts,
No
right?
money, no money
This is
changed
like
hands. It was all accounting. It was all accounting. No money changed.
it's all accounting. This is all accounting. This is like okay, like for those of you who aren't finance people or bankers or whatever, just understand that it's difficult, right, to play these kinds of games, and especially many of these games are also not legal. Okay, but this is. So you're going to invest in this company. They're going to give it right back to you. Okay, and then your stock price also goes up. So you actually get multiple benefits off of the money, right? It's basically a money a green machine, as a friend of mine used to call these things. By the way, interesting was $5 billion into Intel, which, oh, by the way, who just put $5 billion into Intel? Freaking the federal government. Okay, so crazy talk that the federal government and NVIDIA, which is a competitor, right, and put money into Intel. Now here's the kicker: what valuation? Okay, the valuation of Intel was 100 and something, 140, 150 billion dollars implied by the amount of investment that was put in, the amount of stock that they got. Right? What is the valuation of Nvidia? $4.3 trillion. Okay, Intel is worth 1/40th of that. Okay, that blows my freaking mind, dude. That blows my mind. Intel, like literally, who brought you Moore's Law, right? Because Gordon Moore, right, the founder. Crazy,
Can I can I
crazy.
can
It
I
is worth
can I
one
offer like
fortieth
a
of
cynic's
Jensen and his boys. That's outrageous.
dude? But like, it's not that crazy, right? Because Nokia is worth buckets. So like it happens in our industry. It happens all the time, obsolescence. But I think maybe the craziest thing and the most maybe like wicked, cynical take I can make is that people who do strategy understand NVIDIA needs to keep silicon companies around so that they don't get into an antitrust situation. Okay? This is why Microsoft gave Apple $3 billion when Steve came back because they were about to die. If there was no
Yes.
Mac OS keynote numbers, Microsoft would have been under harder scrutiny. It was one of the, even though people look at it and like, oh, you saved Apple, oh, your battle, you didn't kill your enemy. No,
Woo!
we didn't want to kill our enemy, right? We wanted them around because if they weren't around, the eye of Sauron would turn on us and restrict us and break up Microsoft, which was undesirable. So NVIDIA is keeping its
And turned out to
competitor
be
half alive so that the eye of Sauron doesn't focus on NVIDIA.
fascinating, except for the fact that I don't think the Trump administration has an eye of Sauron for this stuff. I think they,
No,
it's
no.
like,
But
hey,
four
let's just
years,
go.
in 2 years, that turns over, and there'll be
Ah,
some Democrat who's going to go after it.
that's fair. And you can say, well, look at Intel. They're still here. Look at, oh, by the way, look at AMD. So fascinating. Yeah, fascinating. Fascinating. All right. What else we got?
Yeah. Well, I think that we are close to the end of this. So what we'll do is that thank you so much for joining us. We know this was sort of a bit rambling, but we covered a lot of ground. I think we got to some interesting things that you won't hear anywhere else. Next week, we will start talking about extensions of this. So one of the things that we want to talk a little bit about is the fact that AI is in a hopeful vein that AI will actually like begin to change Homo sapiens and what we can accomplish on the planet with like extending our peaks and a few other things. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the humanistic things that tie back into building, right? Because I think if you understand these things, you can actually build better products. And so look forward to that. And thank you so much for joining us. And we'll talk to you soon. Cheers.
Cheers, everybody.